Creation, as we saw, happens when Paramatma Shriman Narayana sets into motion the gigantic process of Srishti for souls to continue enjoying and expiating the fruits of their own karma, which they have been accruing since infinite time. What we will talk about today in this video is about why Varnas exist and what is their ultimate purpose of existing. As we all know, in Hinduism, we are often called a religion that divides society by caste or Varnas. A question that keeps recurring is, why do they exist? In this episode, we will see directly from Vedanta, such as Itihasas like the Ramayana and Mahabharata, from Padma Purana, from Vishnu Purana. Broadly, we will have a look at why Varnas exist, why should they exist, and what purpose do they ultimately serve. As karma phalas can create infinitely many kinds of living creatures, karma phalas can also create various kinds of creation within a single category of creations. The reason various kinds of cats, dogs, monkeys, snakes, and even humans exist is due to karma phala, as expounded by the Mahabharata's Adi Parva, Vana Parva, and in particular the Bhishma Parva, which contains the entirety of the Bhagavad Gita, and the Anushasana Parva, which talks in detail about how karma phala can give an Atman various kinds of bodies successively after every lifetime ends for a certain body. Varnas, simply put, are different karmically categorized groups within the broad human fold. Now, don't get me wrong. Varnas exist across creatures. Even Devas, Rakshasas and Asuras have their own Varnas within their folds. We are going to restrict our observation of Varnas to the human fold alone. Unlike in the breeds of animals, the differences among humans are not always explicitly visible among humans. Oftentimes, some of these differences are wholly invisible. We say that a Brahmana is different from a Kshatriya is different from a Vaishya, so on and so forth. But are all the differences always visible? Certainly not. At the outset, two humans definitely look very similar. And yet, our Shastras say that no matter how similar they might look, if their Varna is different, they are fundamentally different, which means that a lot of differences are not going to be perceivable by us. All creation is made of three gunas, sattva, rajas and tamas, which emerge from the body of Bhagavan himself, as the very first two chapters of Vishnu Purana show us. There is no English translation for the term guna. Guna is translated by some as quality. No, that's not really a good translation, because gunas manifest in qualities, but they themselves are not qualities. A quality by itself can't exist. It can represent something that already exists, or it can describe something that already exists, but a quality by itself requires something to exist in the first place. We don't have a really good translation for the term guna in English. All one can say about gunas is that according to the Vishnu Purana, Bhagavata Purana and Upanishads in general, they are a pre-material existence which combine together and give rise to what we call matter in modern scientific terminology. The bodies of living beings are made up of these three gunas in their combined material form, as are other non-living bodies as well. So in general, anything that's materially created, whether it's a living creature's body or a non-living thing like a rock or a dust particle, they have the three gunas in them. Which soul or which Jivatman takes what type of a body and what kind of guna composition will pervade over that body for a given lifetime, that is defined by that soul's associated karma phala for that lifetime. When a soul has to take on a body, and when that body has to live through a lifetime, it has to experience a certain amount of karma phala for that lifetime. The amount of karma phala that's going to be expiated by a soul, by a Jivatman, within a given lifetime is called prarabdha karma phala. This is exactly how Jivatmans take different bodies in different lifetimes. while the Jivatman itself fundamentally is left unchanged. It is really that simple. Thus, at the time of birth, if an Atman's karmaphala for its succeeding lifetime is such that it will gain a sattvika body, the soul might be born among sattvika creatures like cows, deers, or in humans, brahmanas. Likewise, at the time of birth, if the soul's prarabdha karmaphala is dominated by more rajasic karmaphala, it can give the soul the predisposition to be impelled to fall into the womb of a more rajasic creature and take a bodily form there, such as lions, tigers, or among humans, you can say even kshatriyas. This does not mean that after birth, a person born to a brahmana, kshatriya, or vaishya, or shudra parents will necessarily at all times remain a member of these varnas. Now that's a little confusing, right? We have always been taught that, okay, you're born to a brahmana father and a brahmana mother, therefore you're a brahmana. You've been born to a vaishya father and a vaishya mother, therefore you're a vaishya. That's what we've been taught always in common day, in everyday speech. That's what we say. My parents are so-and-so, therefore I am so-and-so. But it's not so simple, because the Manushastra is very different when it comes to acknowledging who belongs to what varna. And that's where the catch lies. If a person is born between a Brahmana father and a Brahmana mother, that person at the time of birth is a Shudra. Strange, right? The scriptures clearly say, Janmano Shudraha Jayate. At the time of birth, he's born as a Shudra. He's born with Shudratva. Then what exactly makes him a Brahmana? After reaching a certain age, the Shastras say that a person born between a Brahmana father and a Brahmana mother, a Kshatriya father, a Kshatriya mother, or a Vaishya father and a Vaishya mother must undergo a certain ritual refinement prescribed by the Vedas. This refinement, the Sanskrit word for refinement, by the way, is samskara. This samskara that such a person must undergo is called the Yajnopavita Dharana ceremony, the ceremony of wearing the sacred thread. Thereafter, he must live the life prescribed by the Shastras for a Brahmana, or in the case of Kshatriya parents, a Kshatriya, or in the case of Vaishya parents, Vaishyas. Only if all these parameters are satisfied does one carry the right to call oneself a Brahmana, a Kshatriya, or a Vaishya. Remember, the sacred thread is prescribed by the Shastras for those male children that are born between a Brahmana mother and a Brahmana father, a Kshatriya mother and a Kshatriya father, or a Vaishya mother and a Vaishya father. These three Varnas, the Brahmanas, the Kshatriyas, and the Vaishyas, are thus called Dvija Varnas or Dvija Jati Varnas. They are those Varnas that produce Dvijas. The Yajnopavita Dharana ceremony is treated as a second birth for that person, and therefore Dvija literally means he who is twice born. One birth from the mother's womb and one birth and a rebirth during the Yajnopavita ceremony. Only if all these parameters are satisfied and that person continues to live according to the rites and according to all the mandatory rules prescribed for a person wearing the Yajnopavita, do they have the right to call themselves Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, or Vaishyas. After wearing the Yajnopavita, a certain strict, austere life is meant to be followed by the person wearing Yajnopavita, something that's barely done today. Only if that is done, the person retains their Brahmanatva or their quality of being a Brahmana, their Kshatriyatva or their quality of being a Kshatriya, or their Vaishyatva, the quality of being a Vaishya. If they do not do this, they will end up losing the status of their Varna. So, what is the ultimate benefit of a Varna? A Varna tells us what kind of karmaphala dominates our given lifetime, and by virtue of that, it tells us what kind of karma is best for us to perform during that particular lifetime for expiating the karmaphalas we have gained through infinitely many lifetimes, and as a result of doing that, moving closer to Paramatman and ultimately leaving the cycle of birth and death. You can say that your Varna And the dharma that the Vedas prescribe for your varna is your shortest ticket to reaching the lotus feet of Sriman Narayana and leaving the cycle of birth and death permanently. It is your next shortest path to reaching God as quickly as possible. That is the ultimate purpose of Varnashrama, of Varna Dharma. It is really that simple if you come to think of it. Varna Dharma, therefore, in principle, serves only this purpose of moving closer to God as fast as one can. But is birth alone then enough for a Varna? The Manushastra and Mahabharata say that they must constantly perform, the members of a Varna must keep performing the samskaras or the religious refinements for that Varna. If they stop doing that, they lose their Varna. A person merely born to a Brahmana or a Kshatriya or a Vaishya or Shudra parents does not belong to those Varnas merely by birth if he or she does not live in a certain manner after being born to such parents. Such people who leave the path of their Varna become bandhus of that Varna. That is, they become the fallen, disgraced members of that Varna. This applies for people of all Varnas in general. Varna Dharma is thus the fundamental source for any other Dharma performed by a person. A person living against Varna Dharma will end up attracting evil karma in any other karma he or she performs. Varnas serve as a way of telling us what is the best karma to be performed by us in a given lifetime and wash away as many sins as we can and move closer to Bhagavan, Sriman Narayana. From this, it is evident that a lot of rules for the Varnas will be common, such as cleanliness, the kind of food to be eaten, strict vegetarianism, etc. And a lot of rules will be distinct. Some Varnas have the right to recite the Vedas, while other Varnas won't have the right to recite the Vedas, but they can learn its essences through Vedanta scriptures. And neither of these, neither the similarities between the rules for the Varnas nor the differences between the rules for the Varnas, serves as a license for disrespecting any Varna, because all Varnas emerge from Bhagavan's own body. The Brahmana Varna is said to emerge from the head of Bhagavan, as the Brahmana is supposed to uphold the Vedas. The Kshatriya is the protector, and so he emerges from the arms of Bhagavan. The Vaishya, the sustainer of human society, emerges from Bhagavan's waist. The Shudra's greatest karma lies in service to the four Varnas in various ways in accordance to the Shastras, and thus, being a supporter of human society, he emerges from the legs of Bhagavan. We are often told that emerging from the feet of Bhagavan is somehow disrespectful. If that were true, why did great sages like Vedavyasa and Valmiki worship the feet of Bhagavan and not his head? Why did Arjuna sit near Krishna's feet and not his head, which is what Duryodhana did? Why did great acharyas such as Bhagavad Ramanujacharya tell us to aspire to reach the feet of God and not the head of God? Everywhere we are told God's feet is the ultimate goal for the Jivatman to go and reach. We are not told God's head or his waist or his arms are the ultimate goal. We are told his feet are the ultimate goal. Isn't it ironic that people who peddle this myth that in some way the Shudras have been disrespected deliberately throughout history were disrespected because the Vedas tell people to go about disrespecting Shudras? The Vedas say that the Shudras emerged from that part of God which is also praised the most in scriptures. Can one not reason by saying that the Shudras have an unfair advantage of having emerged from that part of Bhagavan, which the scriptures praise the most? Well, therein lies the next problem: discrimination on lineage and Varna. Discrimination on lineage and Varna is a sin according to the Shastras. It only shows one's own ignorance that when all creations emerge from the body of Bhagavan, one should not obsess oneself over one's own birth and gain a sense of false superiority. One must keep in mind that such an attitude is condemned by the Shastras and is no way justified by them. Over the past few generations, anti-Hindu forces have tried maligning the Shastras using arguments like Vedanta treating the Shudras as slaves and that Brahmanas have persecuted non-Brahmanas. One must bear in mind that an individual's actions need not be a direct reflection of a scripture of his religion. The evils present in Hindu society are social in nature. not scriptural. Our scriptures, in fact, tell us the way to solve these kinds of social evils and discriminations by saying very clearly that a person is born because of their own prarabdha karma in a certain lineage, and they did not have control over which lineage they are going to be taking life in. Given this dynamic, and given the fact that varnas exist only to let us know what kind of dharma to follow to move closer to God, one must follow one's own varna dharma rather dispassionately, rather than scoffing at another person's lineage only to showcase one's own ignorance. One must also know that if social evils exist in Hinduism, those evils are individual evils and have nothing to do with the scripture of Hinduism, because the scripture itself is against those very same evils. But rarely ever do most Hindus themselves listen to their own scriptures today. And therein lies a sad reality of Kali Yuga. If you like this video, please hit the subscribe button and share this video to fellow Sanatana Dharmins. Thank you for watching. Shrimate Narayanaya Namaha.